Hey there, this is Andrew, and I'm going to bring you a Winds of Exchange house review. Here, we're going to be looking at Sanctum. So, first, let's talk about the characteristics of the house. So, when we think about Sanctum across any set, certainly in this one, we're expecting some serious board presence. Not necessarily in terms of big creatures, although I do expect some fours, fives, maybe sixes, but some armor that's going to give them some real ability to stick to the board, and also some taunt. That's going to be really critical because they're protective. On top of that, we expect some capture, quite a lot of capture probably, and then there are some kind of like some cross house abilities once in a while, but usually you're going to see a lot of board presence, protection, and capture. In terms of you know what house I'd like to see this with, I think I think Unfathomable is the one I'd go for, and the reason is because Sanctum in itself probably is not the engine that's going to make a deck amazing. So you need you need an engine from another house. Unfathomable has such a strong control engine, probably good there, but Unfathomable can benefit from some taunt. So having some of that protective ability, the ability to keep the opponent off check for a little bit while you're searching for your Timothy, to taunt your Brio's Arc, things like that can really can really work well together. My favorite in-house combo for the set. It's a good question. I think I really like Katarina with I can't think of the card name. It's not muster. Recruitment drive, because the ability to take okay, I've been holding your amber, you're going to get it back, but I'm going to suddenly have a huge burst myself is just a really cool ability. And we'll see both those cards come up. And then as far as a Maverick, well, I think a Maverick Brio's Arc would be pretty awesome. Just being able to drop Brio's Arc and taunt it in the same turn would be pretty cool. Cool. All right. Oh, if I could have a legacy, that's actually a question I forgot to ask about Mars. I think in Mars, the legacy I would want would probably be Key Abduction. In Sanctum and Woe, the legacy I think I would want would be Doorstep. If you could do the Katarina thing and then Doorstep, that'd be even better. Okay. Although Martyr provides an option to do it, so it's not totally impossible to do something like that in set. All right, let's get into it. Aja the Inconspicuous. So we're doing rares first. Aja is a 3-power human monk that can't be dealt flank when they're not on a can't be dealt damage when they're not on a flank. This is it's really kind of boring, to be honest. I haven't seen it matter much. Anahita the Trader is a 2-power human merchant with After Reap. Give control of a friendly artifact to your opponent. If you do, they must pay you 2 amber. So it's really stealing, but by another name. And I don't know. This is back from AOA. I've just never seen this be super impactful. I actually had Anahita in the deck that I played in Sealed at Gen Con 2018. So that was no 2019. Sorry, Gen Con 2019. So that was a long time ago. It's an interesting card. It just usually isn't the thing that matters a ton. All right, Batariel of the Gray is a 3-power monk human with 2 armor who says, after Reap, ready each disciple. And that's because Batariel is the rare token bringer in Sanctum. So Batariel brings in Disciple, who's a 1-power human monk who gets +1 power and +1 armor for each monk neighbor it has. So obviously, if you can flood the board with these, they're mostly 3 power, 2 armor, which is cool. The problem is, so if you think about tokens, oftentimes there's kind of like I think there's really a range in tokens of survivability to interesting effects. So if you think about Researcher, for example, it's a good effect, but it's not very survivable. Grunt, no effect, but at 3 power, it's kind of survivable. Trooper, Warrior, survivable, but negative effect, actually. So, and Berserker's probably deserves its own. It's a weird space because it's very survivable if you have Revna. Otherwise, it's going to die right away. So anyway, that's kind of an interesting case. But the point is, Disciple ends up, it's because its ability is all about making it more survivable. It belongs kind of in a space with Grunt or Warrior. The problem is that there's not a lot. There is membership drive membership drive, but there aren't very many abilities in Sanctum that would super benefit from this, like there are in Mars. In Mars, you have Psychic Network, Hypnotic Command, Replay Pod. I think there are more. So, but here there's just less. So, it's for that reason, it seems to me to be a bit underpowered. Okay, that was a long explanation, but I don't think Disciple's that great. If you can ready it when you reap with her, great, but it's unlikely. Okay, moving on. Call to action. This is an interesting one. When you play it, you ready each friendly knight creature. This obviously always revolves around how many knights do you actually have. And in my experience, it just doesn't often hit hard. Now, Disciple's not a knight. We'll just pull out the other tokens here. Squire, not a knight. Look at Squire. She looks like a knight. Defender's a knight. Okay, great. Cleric, not a knight. So, if you get call to action with Defender, I think maybe that's cool. But there's just not, most of the time, it's not going to hit, even if you have a Sanctum token. So that's a little bit of a bummer. Probably makes it even worse than in previous sets. In other sets, you might get 2 or 3 knights out if you were able to kind of set up your turns right. But here, it's more iffy. All right, Friendship. It's an upgrade with an Amber. When this creature will be dealt damage, if it has 1 or more neighbors, that damage is divided among its neighbors as evenly as possible instead. This is like almost as good as Ghost Form. So it's really a reverse Shadow Self, right? Instead of this creature taking damage, its neighbors take damage. But if it's in the middle of your battle line, it can keep getting new neighbors too. So it can be a great way to protect a creature. It's not quite as good as Ghost Form because it doesn't just prevent the damage, and it does not prevent other effects it doesn't prevent destruction. So Ghost Form is a little stronger, but you can use the creature and this stays on it. So I think this is a really interesting upgrade. I have not gotten good use out of it, but I think it's very interesting, and I would love to see it in like a. Again, it's tough because if Sanctum were just a better house in general, then you might be like, oh yeah, I'll even alliance this into a Bryos Arc deck or something. But I don't think you're going to see Friendship get a lot of value unless you have like a really good deck that happens to carry along the Sanctum and have this in it. Okay, Halo of Enlightenment. It's an upgrade that says this creature cannot be attacked while its controller controls a token creature. Play, make a token creature. I've used this on a taunt creature. It's really interesting because it means they can't attack the token that is being taunted, or that's behind the taunt, but they also can't attack the taunt creature, and so they have to find some other way to kill the token. Which, in that deck it's cleric, so 1 damage Pippin, they're good, but it's an interesting setup. Harmonic Ritual. It's an action with an amber. When you play it, you choose a friendly creature, and if its left neighbor shares a house with it, you gain 1 amber and repeat this effect on that creature. So, so at the end of the day, including the amber pip, you get 1 amber per creature in a row that share a house, which is kind of cool. It's rewarding you for setting things up that way, and with tokens, it can be quite good. Heavy Subsidies. This is a weird one. It's an artifact. It's a law, and it makes keys cost +6, but it also gives each creature after reap gain 1. So, it ends up especially nerfing amber pips and action based, non-creature based amber gain. But yeah, it's interesting. I have not seen this play out as like super important in games, but it's interesting, and I'm sure we'll see it come up here and there. Okay. Honorable Claim. This is an action with an amber. When you play it, each friendly night creature captures 1. Again, it's kind of same problem as Call to Action. If you have a lot of knights, it's good. Otherwise, it's gonna suffer. Lady Lorena is a 6-power knight spirit with 3 armor, taunt, and her taunt also applies to her neighbor's neighbors. So that's kind of cool. It's a big taunt effect. Again, it doesn't feel to me like this is often game changing, but it could be. It really could be. So. Martyr's End is an action with an amber. When you play it, you destroy any number of friendly creatures, and you gain 1 amber for each creature destroyed this way. I think that's pretty great, especially if you can get a lot of creatures with good destroyed effects. Like getting this in a Prospector deck will be super fun, for example. Mighty Lance is an action that does 3 damage to a creature and 3 damage to a neighbor of that creature. So it's not exactly splash because it only hits 1 neighbor, but 3 and 3 damage is actually quite a lot. I feel like they could have justified putting a pip on this back in the Coda days even. Numquid the Fair is a 3-power human. With play, destroy an enemy creature. Repeat this effect if your opponent still controls more creatures than you. And yes, that does mean you keep repeating it until they don't have more creatures than you. And you get that first hit even if you have more creatures. So really a nice creature. All right, I love One Stood Against Many. This is a fun one. It's an action with an amber. When you play it, you ready and fight with a friendly creature 3 times, each time against a different enemy creature, and you resolve the fights 1 at a time. That's a really fun effect. And getting to set up and I love the art too, but also then getting if you can set up a good situation to run it, it's just very cool. interesting trying to figure out like what, I think about like Pile of Skulls having a Saurian card or having a Dino Skull way back in the day. I don't feel like these creatures are quite dis-y enough. So I don't know what they would be. And this guy here, I could kind of imagine him being Shadows or Mars, but who knows? I suspect there's something out there that we don't know about. It looks very Warhammery, to be honest. All right. Proclamation 346E. This is a good law. I love proc. So it says, while your opponent does not control creatures from 3 different houses, their keys cost +2. If you have a strong woe board setup, this can be really devastating because you really can keep your opponent from having a lot of creatures, and then having just a constant their keys cost +2 is real good. Renewed Life. This is an action with an amber. When you play it, you fully heal a creature, and you make a token creature for each damage healed this way. That's fun. Sanctum Guardian is a 6-power knight spirit with 1 armor and taunt, and it also says, after fight or reap, you swap it with another friendly creature in your battle line. Very nice. And yeah, big like mecha vibes in this art. Serial the Steadfast is a meme and a 5-power spirit knight with 2 armor. And while it's not your turn, your creatures cannot become exhausted. This was really interesting in Dark Tidings, especially I think when that was like a major thing. Although Unfathomable still can do that in this set. But it's so situational. Like, so if you had if this said your other creatures can't be destroyed, right? That would be super powerful because every deck that you're going to face wants to destroy your creatures on some level. But not that many decks have a strong game around exhausting, so it's too situational, which is appropriate in rares, but sometimes it's just even too much for that. All right, the Promised Blade is an artifact and weapon. It has an amber on it. It says at the start of each player's turn, the player with the fewest creatures in play takes control of the Promised Blade. I love that kind of thematic effect. And then it has Omni, a friendly creature captures 1. Yeah, that's an interesting card. Is it good? Not sure, but it's interesting for sure. Zephon the Opulent is a 2-power human who can't be used unless there are 2 or more friendly token creatures in play. Okay, that's interesting. When you play Zephon, you make 2 token creatures, and after reaping, you gain 2 amber. So it's reap for 3, which is real strong. But then there are these. It's hard to get to reap with Zephon. So that's an interesting design space. I'm happy for them to make a card like this at rare. It's fine. All right, on to uncommons. Alms Master is a 4-power human knight with 1 armor, deploy, taunt, and when you play Alms Master, each of her neighbors captures 1 amber. That's pretty cool. This is a nice one. I especially like having deploy taunt. That's just great. And then the capture is kind of a nice bonus. I guess without that, this would be worse than Chow. But still, I think that's a really nice effect. Baldric the Bold is back. He's a 4-power human knight with 2 armor. Before Baldric fights, if the creature Baldric fights is the most powerful enemy creature, you gain 2 amber. I've always loved this card. It's a fun thing. It's hard to get good value out of. You have to look out though. If you have like a bunch of tiny creatures and your opponent has like a Baldric the Bold, 1 stood against many, you're about to have a bad day. So there are some really cool things that can happen. Usually it's like get a fight, get 2 amber. That's probably about it. And that's fine. Glorious Few is a really interesting card to have in this set because of how often boards just get out of control. So it's an action that says play for each creature your opponent controls in excess of you, gain 1 amber. So if you have 3 creatures and your opponent has 6, they have 3 more creatures than you, so you would get 3 amber. I just got so wrecked by this early in my Keyforge learning experience that it's burned a path in my memory for sure. It's an interesting card. Most of the time, you're not going to get great value out of it if your opponent's paying attention. But once in a while, it just is wow. And even so, if your opponent plays 2 fewer creatures on a turn because of this, if they discard two cards instead of playing them, then that's value too, even though it's not coming in the form of you getting amber. Grey Abbess is a 3-power human monk with 1 armor, who says that each friendly token creature gets +1 armor, and when you play her, you make a token creature. Great. It's fine. It's fine. Depends a lot on what token creature you have. Grey Augur is a fun one. Again, I feel like it's really difficult to get great value out of Grey Augur, but it's a cool idea. 3-power human monk with 1 armor. Each of her neighbors gains after fight gain 1. Hadroth's Wall, love it. It's an artifact and item. It says each friendly flank creature gets +2 power. That's a really fun card. Yeah, I love to see that do interesting things and warp the game. It is important. It's hard to it can sometimes be a little hard to keep track, so you got to be careful of that. Hymn to Duma is an artifact and power. It says each friendly creature gains Omni. Destroy this creature. A friendly creature captures 2 amber. Yeah. This one's interesting. I mean, that's a really strong ability. Partially because it's so easy to flood the board in this set. So you're making all these creatures, and then suddenly they can be used on any turn to capture 2. Really good. Even better if you have creatures that have good destroyed effects. Yeah, it's a very cool card. And it's a rare, so how to get in with the... That's so weird. It's a rare and it got stuck in with the uncommons numerically. That's very, very strange. I had a friend get this in Sealed Alliance with a Whirlpool, and that was a crazy game. Not in the same actual deck, but in Sealed Alliance pulled it off. That was super cool. All right, here's Katarina the Summoner. She is a 4-power human with after play or reap, capture 1. And when she's destroyed, you make a token creature for each amber on her. That's really nice. The capture's cool, and then kind of having your opponent be in a position where, okay, they want to kill her to get the amber back, but that's going to accelerate you in some ways too, is a really interesting mechanic. I love that. Anytime you can force your opponent into an interesting decision, that's good for the game. Light Everlasting is an action with an amber. When you play it, you play a Sanctum creature from your discard pile anywhere in your battle line. I never get good value out of this card. Almost never. It just so often is the case that I get it early before I have any creatures in my discard pile. It's rough, but in theory, it's cool. It's very limiting that it's play a Sanctum creature. Lightbringer Outpost is an artifact with an amber. It's a location, and so it has action. Put a friendly creature on the bottom of its owner's deck. If you do, a friendly creature captures 3. That's very strong. Capture 3 every Sanctum turn is pretty good. And so if you have this in a deck that makes a lot of tokens, return a card that you're going to want to actually draw later. Capture 3. It's just great. Okay, Martyr of the Vault is a really fun space here. 4-power human knight with 1 armor. when Martyr is destroyed, if your opponent has 7 or more amber, they lose all but 5. So this is taking that place of Doorstep. It's slower, but that means you could save it and you can actually fire it outside of a Sanctum turn. So it really opens up interesting options. I love it. I love that this card exists. Shoulder Armor is an upgrade with an amber. It says while this creature's on a flank, it gets +2 armor and +2 power. Sigil of Brotherhood is an artifact with an amber. It's a power. And when you Omni it, you destroy it, and for the remainder of the turn, you may use friendly Sanctum creatures. This can be good. It's especially good if you have Sanctum tokens. So I guess in that sense, there is a little bit more benefit to having just some bodies stick on the board than I was letting on to earlier. So can be good, but and you know, here's a funny thing. We always knew there were going to be fish people because of terms of redress, but here's another hint that there would be fish people. And here too, I wonder what we might be missing. I see like Untamed, Brobnar. I think this is either Mars or Shadows. I think that's Sanctum. Is that Geisoid? Unfathomable and maybe Logos. Interesting. Alright, Squire Recruitment. It's an action with an amber. When you play it, you make a token creature for each friendly knight creature. Okay. Yeah, again, it's just how many knights do you have? That's what you gotta ask. Absolve is an action with an amber. When you play it, you heal 1 damage from each creature, and then each creature that was healed this way captures 1 from its opponent. Can be a really nice effect. Depends on the board state, obviously. Kind of like the opposite of Cleansing Wave. I like that. And that was at common. Okay, this one's also at common. Battlefield Evangelist, 3 power human knight with 2 armor, who says after fight, make a token creature. This is fine. It's fine. I haven't seen Battlefield Evangelist be really good, but it's fine. And the 2 armor is significant. Celestial Gorm, this is your artifact control in Sanctum. It's an artifact with an amber. It's an item, and when you Omni it, you destroy it and return each other artifact to its owner's hand. So it does not get rid of artifacts, but it does get them off the board for a turn, which can be good. There are a couple interesting ways to use Celestial Gorm. One is you can actually use this on your turn. Let's say you have 3 artifacts with amber pips on them. You could play them, pop them back to your hand, and then play them again. So that's one way to get value out of this. It also, again, sometimes just clearing an artifact off the board for a turn can make a big impact. It also could be the case if your opponent has, 2 artifacts each in all 3 houses, then just popping them back to their hand means their hand's going to be clogged for a while, which could be good. So there's interesting avenues for this card. There we have Chow, 4 power human knight with 2 armor with deploy and taunt. Seems simple now, but a strong defensive card. I like it. Colonel Mariana is a 5 power spirit knight with 1 armor. When you play Colonel Mariana, each friendly creature captures 1 amber. Each friendly knight creature. Each friendly knight. Yeah. Okay, Grand Melee. At least here you know you're getting 1 capture. Okay, Grand Melee is an action. When you play it, you destroy each creature that does not share a house with at least 1 of its neighbors. So this one punishes you for not bunching up your houses, which is kind of interesting. Cassiel the Benevolent is a 2-power human knight with 2 armor. It's the 3 enhance creature at common in Sanctum. And Cassiel has enhance, an amber, and 2 captures. Yeah, I think it's good. Always happy to see Cassiel show up. Nightapult is an artifact and weapon. It has action the next time a friendly creature enters play this turn. You may have it enter anywhere in your battle line ready. So essentially, it gives the next friendly creature you play deploy, and it enters play ready, which is really nice. Membership Drive is an action. When you play it, you make a token creature, and you gain an amber for each friendly token creature. That can really be a huge burst of amber if you have a lot of token creatures. Muster is an action. When you play it, you make a token creature, and if your opponent has more amber than you, you archive Muster. Ostentatious Mount is an upgrade with an amber that gives the creature it's attached to taunt, and when you play it, you move the creature anywhere in its controller's battle line. Outflank is an action with an amber that says that each Sanctum flank creature captures 2 from its opponent. It's often possible to get the full 4 captures, so having a gain amber capture 4 is actually super good. Pandulf the Provoker is a 4-power human knight with 2 armor, taunt, and when you play him, you enrage an enemy creature. That's a cool effect. Very nice way to handle annoying reap creatures. Request Donations is an action that makes a token creature and it captures 2. I think that's fine. Retribution is an action with an amber. When you play it, if there are more enemy creatures than friendly creatures, destroy an enemy creature. I feel like this one is a little sad that it. I mean, I guess if it just said destroy an enemy creature, maybe that's too good. Yeah, I'm sure it is. It shouldn't get a pip in that case. As is, it's oftentimes just a pip. So, yeah, that's a little rough. Revered Monk is a 4-power human monk that gets +2 armor for each of its Sanctum neighbors. Sanctum does like to bunch up. Taxing Journey is an action with an amber that says play a friendly creature captures 1 amber, and each of its neighbors that shares a house with it captures 1 amber. So possibly capture 3. Very nice. And lastly, I'm very glad to see again the Grey Rider, who's a 2-power human monk with deploy and play, fight, reap. You may ready and fight with a neighboring creature. Grey Rider is great. We love him. Okay, really quick look back at those common tokens. We have Squire, who's a 2-power human with taunt. This is an interesting one. I have not seen this be really like the star token creature in a deck. I think partially because it is more about, defending what you're doing than advancing a win condition. And so some of the tokens that are more directly about getting you to a win condition are stronger. But nevertheless, I think there's a version of the universe where you have a Bryozark and you have a lot of Squires and your opponent is just sad. So I think there's potential there. Defender is a 2-power human knight with 1 armor. I think the other thing I don't like about Disciple is, at the end of the day, if you have 2 disciples next to each other, they're just defenders. And so I feel like, and they can get a little more powerful, but it's just 2 tokens that are effectively very similar. And then Cleric is a 1 power human. After Cleric enters play, she captures 1 amber. This is really nice, potentially. The problem is it's in that 1 power zone where if your opponent has autocannon, it just can't win. It just can't stay on the board. But outside of that, being able to capture an amber, capture so many amber on all your turns as you're making tokens can be a really nice effect. So I really like Cleric. Okay, so that was all the Sanctum cards in Winds of Exchange. Again, I'll say as an overview, I just feel like the outside of Membership Drive, the Amber generation in Sanctum is a little low, and it's a little low on game-changing effects, and so I would rank them lower on the power curve than other houses. But I still like Sanctum, and there is some potential there. They're probably just more of like a support house, um, and that's okay. All right, that's it. Hope you enjoyed, and that you will get out there and forge some keys.